Okay, let's start with the Sedra. First of all, a good morning, everybody. And this week I'll get it correct because tomorrow is Shabbos.
And this time is Shabbos Mevorachim.
Shabbos Mevorachim.
Paul.
Oh, sorry.
Sunday is Rosh Chodesh, and then we come to Dover HaMeyuchas, the day of before the Shlosh Shmei Hagbola, before the 3 days when we had to border the mountain. The day before was called Yom HaMeyuchas. It was the day of our importance. Interesting like that. The Yichas comes first. I don't know if you've heard the story. It's a name given by the Rabbonim to the day of in Sivan. And the story is told of this is a true story, by the way, of a young man, and he was not so well behaved. And the Rabbonim said to him, you know, the yichus that you've got, you should be so careful. Your grandfather was a great gadol, and your father is, and what family you come from? To which he turned around and said, yichus shmichus, he says, what does it mean? Gar nicht. To which he turned around and he said, look, he said, your education is a 0. I said, your parents are a 0. I said, your grandparents are a 0. But if you put out yourself to become a mensch, if you've got yichus, you become a millionaire. All the zeros become important to you. Do you see that? He thinks, yichus is at my parents. What difference does it matter whether my father was a gadol or my grandfather? It does matter if you yourself are a wonderful person and you can put that one in the front, you become a multimillionaire. You see, it's an amazing thing. And we're tying ourselves right the way back to Avraham Avinu. So why shouldn't we be proud of who we are? Asher b'chabonu. Anyway, let's start with this week's Sedra. The Parsha is Bamidbar. I've got it correct? Bamidbar. No double this week.
No.
The Parsha of Bamidbar is always read, believe it or not, Erev Shavuos, before Shavuos. And let's give us some of the reasons why. You know, there's no such thing as it happened by chance. Mikra, it happens. Nothing happens by chance in our religion. Everything is there according to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's cheshbon. You'll find this, by the way. You remember in Vayikra, when we just finished, there was a small aleph at the beginning written in the Sefer Torah. Because Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to take the aleph out, and it said Vayikra. It happened by chance that God said, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the aleph back in. There was only one time that you will ever find something happen by chance, and that was by Bilam. Although it was predestined, but it happened by chance. The Kodesh Baruch said to Malach. So nothing happens by chance. So what's the reasoning behind having Bamidbar in the week before Shavuos or Erev Shavuos? Because there are no coincidences. So let's have a look and see. It says here, and if you remember, I said this to you last week, Vayichen Shom Yisrael Neged Hohor, in a singular form. You remember the unity of the Jewish people. It's the opposite. He says the mountain, the Jewish people stood as one. And Rashi wants to come along and say, how is it possible they can stand as one? It's impossible. It says, no, he says, there he says, K'ish echad b'leiv echad. They all came together like one person with one participant thought that they were coming now to collect the Torah. The singular form is a difficult thing to understand. What's it going on? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to emphasize to us something here. Unity amongst Klal Yisrael is the most important thing. The Gemara even brings this down. He says, when Klal Yisrael are united, Hashem forgives them for absolutely everything that they've done. And it teaches us, it says that the Pasuk says, Ein lecho adam she'ein lo shah. There is no such thing, there's no person without his own hour. Ve'ein lecho dover she'ein lecho mokam. And there's no such thing as something which hasn't got its own place. You know why we've got disunity, we haven't got unity? Because of jealousy. People are envious of others. They want to occupy the spot that somebody else is occupying. They want what the other person has got in the materialism. They would like that thing. So this is what's coming to say here is the connection in Bamidbar is coming to teach us, number one, the meaning of unity. I found something else which is interesting. It says the word Bamidbar comes to talk about Matan Torah. Now, the Medrash brings down and says there were 3 elements by which God gave us the Torah. The first one was Mayim, the second one was Eish, and the third one was Midbar. Mayim was water. God gave us the Torah like water, He gave us a Torah like fire, and he gave us a Torah in the wilderness. What's the connection between those three things in the Medrash? And I'll give you my explanation. If you watch water, go down to the river and sit down. You've got lovely, you've got beautiful ponds and all the rest over the bridges. You can watch the canals going by, right? But if you keep watching and you put a marker on the top of the water, if you were able to do it, how long would that marker stay with you? It would disappear. It would move on, because water keeps moving non-stop. It doesn't stay static. This is what God is telling us about the Torah, Mayim. It has to flow. It has to be always on the move. It always has to be something new, something refreshing, something fresh, never ever static, never the same. And if you look at it, you will see that that's how God gave us the Torah, to teach us the first lesson of Mayim. Be moving, be always on the move, be always excited. Now we come to the excitement. Aish, fire. In Hebrew, fire is a bren. You learn with a burn. You know, if you do something, you really get the pressure. It's, you know, you say afterwards, I geschmack. I did something, I was successful, and you get the pleasure out of doing it. The more energy you put into something, the more pleasure you get out of it, correct? The more you put in is the more you get out. So here he's telling us, Aish, be like the fire, burn, be with excitement, not physically, but we're talking about in a very, very emotional sense. Enjoy it. You know, I remember even in yeshiva, when somebody found something which nobody else even had learned about, and all the excitement, the burn, his face went red, and he said, I've achieved something. You know, fire, you're burning it, you're consumed. You let the Torah consume you. Let it become you. You become the Torah. And if you remember, I said this to you last week as well, that a Talmud Chacham is not like a Sefer, is more important than a Sefer Torah. A man who's got knowledge, because a Sefer Torah is only parchment and ink, and you stand up for that. But a man who's a Talmud Chacham, an outstanding scholar, he's living. He's the living parchment. He's the living ink. You stand up for such a person as well. So that's the second one. Midbar. What was the Midbar? We'll come in a little bit more on that later. Midbar is a wilderness. A wilderness is a place which has got nothing in it, absolutely garnished. It's an empty spot with sand and everything. The Torah is telling us, wherever you are, whether you're in Amsterdam, whether you're in England, whether you're in America, wherever you can be, doesn't make any difference. Even if you're stuck in a midbar, in a wilderness. And I can tell you, I had a visitor here many years ago when I was the rabbi here. I invited an astronaut. It was a Muslim. He was coming to speak for an organization. I found out, and I invited him to my show. He happened to have been an Orthodox astronaut. Can you imagine? A frum Orthodox astronaut going up in space. And of course, all the questions about, what did you do? He said, I'll tell you, he said, how I managed it. He said, I got a scribe to write for me the portion I'd be up in space. And he put it onto parchment, and I put it onto ink because he could read the Torah. He said, and I put Velcro on the back of it, like I did with a mezuzah. I got a mezuzah printed. I put it on the door of the spaceship inside. He said, with a Velcro. And it stayed on because, you know, if you think about it, it floats in space because of all the rest of the nonsense. So he said he put the Velcro on, took everything with him. So I said, well, what did you do about time? We said, well, that's very easy, he says, because the Torah even tells us about time. If you're in a wilderness, you wake up in the middle of a midbar, somebody throws you in there, you don't know what day of the week it is, what do? You start your time from now, and you start counting. He said, I did that. The moment I got into the spaceship, he said, I started counting my own time. I had my own calendar. He said, and I knew when Shabbos was. I knew when Shabbos could come in. He said, so even in space, I was able to remember I was a Jew. So you see, it's an amazing thing, this, no matter where you are. So God is telling us that with the midbar, giving us in the wilderness, that you get, wherever you are, you have to keep the Torah. You can't excuse yourself from that at all. The other thing, of course, is why Mount Sinai, of all places, and we'll come to that later. Mount Sinai is the fact that it was the smallest mountain in the wilderness. God didn't want to give us the Torah on the top of the biggest, tallest mountain in the world. He gave us on the smallest mountain for anivus, for modesty, for humility. The Torah has to be accepted with humility. So here already we've got an introduction into what we're going to be doing next week. And next week, and by the way, you'll find, and I'm going to discuss this with you, we don't have any mitzvah for Shavuos. If I were to ask you, what do you think the mitzvahs of Shavuos are? If you come and tell me eating cheesecake, I'll tell you. You're all right in Amsterdam. You only have to wait an hour after your meet, then you can go into your cheesecake. You have to wait 3 to 6 hours. So there's not the difference here. I don't understand. I remember learning this in yeshiva, and they said there, I have a lot of Dutch friends, and they used to come and tell me, oh, he said, we'll be milchik in an hour. You can sit down and watch us eat our ice cream. I thought that chutzpah, you rub it in. I don't know whether you still keep an hour. It's because I remember once I asked the question, somebody asked me the question, why is it we keep 3 hours in England between meat and milk? Now, you won't find a source for this. I did. And the answer is that in the Shulchan Aruch, it says, Bein Seuda li Seuda, between one meal and the next. Now, we haven't had breakfast yet, but we'll soon have it. But you have your breakfast, let's say 7:30 after Davening, 7:30. So 10:30, 11, you have your 11sies. It's 3 hours. You have your lunchtime about 2 o'clock, then you have 5 o'clock tea, 8 o'clock dinner. Every 3 hours, you've got another meal. It would appear that you in Amsterdam eat every flipping hour. You don't stop freessing. I read, somebody told me today, it was an amazing thing, this. They said he took his plants and he planted them in the garden, and it beautifully grew and grew bigger and bigger. He said, I planted myself in my sofa. He says, and I'm just watching myself grow and grow and grow. So you've got to be so careful. It applies even to human beings. So here we go. Let's go back now to the Kabbalah Satorah. Let's go now. And why is it then? What's the connection? We now understand we've got the connection of Bamidbar to Torah, but what's the connection with Bamidbar Shavuos and Zaman Matan Torah saying, or the season of the giving of the law? The portion described, I found this, by the way, from Rabbi Twersky. He brings down the commentary. He says that if you look how the Jewish people were arranged in the wilderness, we've read this, everybody had their own flag. Did you notice how they all sat around the ark in the middle? Everybody was arranged around it. Every single person knew his rightful place, where he belonged. It's easy to tell children, where do you live? They've got their home. They know the security of their home. That's where they are a unit, a family unit, correct? We also had family units. We had 12 tribes. Remember, the tribe of Levi were responsible for the carrying, etc., of the ark and everything. But it goes as follows. The verse says, Ish al diglai be'oises leveis avasom. Every person had to go according to his flag. He says, Yachanu b'nei Yisrael, that they camp. If you belong in an army, they've each got their own emblem. You've probably seen this. They've got their emblems. And each one, when they go on parade, you won't find a Navy standing next to a Marine. They're all different. They know their family, they know their unit, they know their boxes, and that's when they stood. The unity of Klal Yisrael at this particular time is an amazing thing. They all knew where their rightful place was. When they came to marching, they knew when they had to follow the ark, who was first, who came next. Everything was laid down in a particular order. Alavai, we would have this. Who was it? Somebody said to me, I was reading Rabbi Professor Krohn's book, and he was talking about education. And he said, he had in his house, he said, a notice. He had a lot of children. Each one was given on the fridge, it was a notice what their duties were for that particular day. Because what he was trying to say was, we're a unit. Each one has a responsibility to do something else. Now, how can we get this into normal life? I'll tell you, very simple. Why don't we just use an analogy? Our Jewish people are like a symphony, an orchestra. I love music. And have you ever noticed how in an orchestra, everybody has got their own, you can't put drums in the middle of the violins or the violins in the middle of the percussion. So it's like everybody's got their spot, everybody's got their place, and everybody knows exactly how they would use it. And if they didn't, the performance would actually be a complete disaster, because the violinist plays his part and the drummer plays his part. Everybody has to play their part. We're one harmonious unit as far as that's concerned. Now, I can't remember. I've tried and looked. I remember a true story, and I just can't get the names. There was once a very, very famous conductor of an orchestra, and a young man went to visit him, And he said, look, he said, this orchestra, this Philharmonic Orchestra is playing. Would you like to listen with me tonight for this orchestra? And they played them. We listened to the symphony. And at the end, the young man said, well, what did you think? He said, something was wrong. He said, there was a person missing in that orchestra. He said, have you lost your marbles? He says, you can tell from listening that there was somebody wasn't in the orchestra. He said, yeah. So he said, come back tomorrow. He came back tomorrow, and this conductor phoned up the conductor of the orchestra. He said, tell me, he says, who was missing at your orchestra last night? He says, yeah, he said, the main violinist wasn't, the leading violinist was ill. He said, but that's an amazing thing. He said, yes, he said, it's an amazing thing. He said, but my ear says unity. If I can't pick up the whole picture, he said, there's something is missing. He said, I'm attuned to it. That's how we've got to be. We've got to be attuned to the Jewish people as one unit. I don't know whether you feel this and I know this as well. And even just now, and even during this virus time, have you noticed how Klal Yisrael have got, at the moment they're starting to split up badly as well, but could you feel whenever there's a problem in Eretz Yisrael, how we all get to heal him, daven and pray when there's a disaster, when there's a plague, everybody's davening. Have you noticed this? An amazing thing, this. The unity comes only after Klal Yisrael seems to be hit. The late Lord Jacobowitz was once asked, what's the definition of an anti-Semite? He says, somebody who hates us more than is necessary. He says, because anti-Semitism was created to pull us together, not to pull us apart, but to pull us together. Unity is our only way in which we are going to survive. And this is a family unit. You'll know if you've got a really good family units gather together, even in times of challenges. We pull together. We have to be. Otherwise, chas v'sholom, it won't work. So therefore, the message of Parshas Bamidbar is unity. Klal Yisrael came under the banner. They stood together, and that's why the Torah reading is preceded by Shavuos. In the desert, everybody had their flag, everybody did it. No one tribe, no one flag was more important than anybody else. Each of them, they came together with a unity. So he said as follows, the story says that it was a very interesting thing. You know, Chelem was a wonderful place. They were mad. They were Mishigoyim, the Chelemites, you know, the Mishigoyim. They were crazy. And again, Rabbi Twersky tells a story. He says his favorite story was one day, he said, a citizen of Chelem was in the public baths. And it suddenly dawned to him that without his clothing, people will look alike. He was anxious. And this is a Chelemite. When it comes to go home, how would he know which one was me? So what did he do? He tied a red ribbon around his toe. But unfortunately, the water was very wet. And as he went in, the red ribbon came off. And as he finished his bathing, he noticed that one of the other bathers there had the red ribbon stuck to his foot. And he got angry. He said, you're me. He said, you're going away, you're me. How can you take me away from you? He didn't even know who he was. The red thing was on the other foot. So he said, when the time to leave, he approached him. He said, I know who you are. But he says, can you now tell me who I am? And that was the problem. We've got to know, number one, who we are. The bather, you see, this is the Chelemites, but unfortunately, we have got to be very, very careful. We accept the Torah every year. We accept the Torah. To be part of Klal Yisrael, we have to be proud of who am I? Not mind who he is, who she is, or they are. Who am I? So that's this week's Seder. Why Shavuos comes just after the Seder of Bamidbar. A beautiful Seder. A lot of repetitions in the coming weeks now, by the way. And you'll be having Nosai as well, all the gifts. Again, the proof of what I'm saying is that every tribe gave a gift to the building of the Beis HaMikdash. And God said everyone, it's like, you know, when the children get married, or when the bar mitzvah boys in the olden days, they would get a pen, and they said, or a watch. Oh, he said, just what I needed. He had 12 in the cupboard already. Or you get the young couple getting married. I don't know what it is. The people seem to get a lot of crystal. The kids don't want it. I've got 6 decanters in my cupboard because my kids kept getting decanters and they don't want them. But everybody, they wrote a letter, just what we needed for the COVID Shabbos. So, you know, it's just an amazing thing, this, that every person's present was given with a full heart and was received with a full heart. It happened once in Boreham Wood, by the way. An amazing story. Somebody sent a wedding present to a young couple, but forgot to take the label out that he got the present when they got married. And that present went round the whole community, ended back with the original person who gave it at the very beginning. So if you get a present and you want to give it with a full heart, make sure that you don't take, you make sure you do take the labels out of the gift. It's like Shalach Monas. It's like somebody brought Shalach Monas to somebody, took the label off and put his label on the pack and said, oh, would you give this to Mr. So-and-so? This is how it is. But as long as you give it with it's not the present that matters, it's the way it's given. Now let's look now to Shavuos, because it's only a few days away and we've got to think very, very carefully. I know you've got a lot of shiurim coming, but you know, Shavuos, you can find a big idea even from the small details. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this. Shavuos, it's on the 6th of Sivan. Let's look at some of the customs that we have. And I'm going to tell you, people seem to think there are different types of Jews. Sorry about the phone, it's the line. My children's phone always Erev Shabbos to say good Shabbos to make sure we don't need anything for Shabbos. So they phone me, the phone. My wife's got it. So let's see. Pesach, there are different types of Jews. There's the gastronomic Jew. That means he loves food. Now you will tell anybody no matter how much of a standard that they keep, ask them about what they keep. Oh, I eat matzah on Pesach. I eat cheesecake on Shavuos. I eat latkes and donuts on Hanukkah. I can go right through the whole every yontiv. It's food, gastronomic. I'm a chaya. But what else do you do? What else do I need to do? I eat the food. That's all that matters. There is the cardiac Jew. That means his heart. I get nachas when I look at the television and I see a Jew on the television praising us. I get such pleasure and such nachas from it. And they said there are all different. There's the armchair Jew. He just likes to watch as long as you don't ask him. There's the checkbook Jew. He'll sign a check, and that's, as far as he's concerned, that's his donation for it. So let's see here. All the other Yomim Tovim, except, I must tell you, have got something important. Pesach. You've got the Seder. You've got everything that goes with that Seder. You've got the egg. You've got all these simonim that go into it, matzahs, morah. But they're a mitzvah that you have to eat them. It's not just the gastronomic. And this is at Hanukkah. You've got menorah. So what, sukkahs, you're sitting in a sukkah. You're going outside. So what are you doing on Shavuos? What's Shavuos got? Absolutely nothing. But we have customs. And there's a big difference between a custom and a mitzvah, a command. In other words, if you don't do any of these, if you don't eat cheesecake, then you're not doing anything wrong. And my wife likes to make sure I'm a mahadran. She'll make a strawberry cheesecake and then have a plain cheesecake and another cheesecake. So we have to be mahadran, mina mahadran on cheesecake. But that's not a mitzvah. In fact, sometimes I think just at the moment it's a big avera because you've got to be careful of overeating the cheesecakes. But seriously, that's not a mitzvah. It's just a minhag. So let's look at the minhagim that we have for it. And let's look at the reasons why. Because, everything, you just can't come along and say, eat cheesecake. It's a nice time to eat it. It's coming to summer. It's much pleasure. And I'm going to, by the way, discuss with you in a minute the fact that we eat milchik on cheese on Yontiv. It's I don't know whether in Amsterdam you have that minhag as well. Do you have that minhag, cheese, to have a milchik meal?
Yes.
I'm going to explain to you why we do it and why it's not against halacha. So let's look at this to see. So let's start with some of the things that we have. Number one, the mitzvah on Shavuos is to eat milchik. Now, why do we eat milchik? Very interesting. When was Moshe Rabbeinu taken out of the Nile? He was taken out of the Nile on Shavuos. He was brought, remember, you've got to work this out, by the way. It was Zion Adar, he was born. 3 months he was hidden by his mother, was Zion Sivan. He was brought into the basket, the princess found him. And by the way, can I interject here and tell you something about this? People don't understand what's going on here. Pharaoh was a Rosh Gomer. He was a wicked, wicked man, no question. And yet his daughter came and she turned around and she said, what did she say? She said, Ki min hamayim mishisihu. I dragged this baby out of the water. That's what they translate it, correct? And Pharaoh said you can keep him. He knew it was a Jewish child. And yet he said you can keep. What's going on here? What was it she said to him? You see, we read the Torah, and we'll come again to discuss this. We read the Torah thinking, oh, that's good enough. Without the explanations and understandings, you can't read it. You can't change it. We'll come to that. We can't change the Torah, but we can explain it. She turned around and she said to him as follows, Mayim, water. Where did she find the baby? In the river Nile. What was the Nile to the Egyptians? It was their God, correct? So she came along. She says, Daddy, look, just that God gave me a present. Ki minamayim. God gave me this child, Mishisihu. I brought him out. I took him out from the water. So she was turning around. She was saying, God gave it to you. Oh, in that case, if our God gave you that, I can't give him back. You understand? And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu was actually, apart from all the other Nisim, but this is somebody told me, Mishisihu, was this child is Egyptian. She was actually speaking to her dad and telling him. So here he was brought out on Zion Sivan. And by the way, although we keep the 6th of Sivan, that's also dependent on when Rosh Chodesh was. Because in the olden days, we were given it on the 7th of Sivan, but that's not important at the moment. So number one, Moshe Rabbeinu was taken out on Shavuos. He was then, what was the story continues? That the midwife, they couldn't find any, the Egyptian women were trying to feed the baby, to give him milk, but the baby refused to drink. Moshe refused until Miriam came along and said, Mummy will come, not his mother, but my mother just had a baby. She'll be only too pleased. She's lost the child, but she'll be only too pleased to feed the child. He would only drink Cholav Yisrael, milky food, the kosher milk. So on Shavuos, that Moshe Rabbeinu actually was saved on Shavuos, he only drank, b'schus him, for his merit, we drink milky stuff. That's number one. Number two, the gematria, the numerical value of the word milk cholov is 40. That's corresponding to the 40 days that Moshe Rabbeinu was on Mount Sinai. One of the names of Har Sinai is Gavunuyim. It means cheese, Gvina. But there's another reason, a very, very beautiful reason. When the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai on Shavuos, they had a major problem. What day of the week was it? It was Shabbos. They were given the Torah on Shabbos. And the HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them halachas. Not only did he give them the written law, he gave them the oral law. And what do we learn? Lo sevashel gedi b'chalev imoi. You can't have milchik and fleishik together, number one. Number two, in the oral law, we learned about shechita. You can't eat meat unless you kill the animals. And if you've mixed up your milky dishes with your meaty dishes, you've got to kasher them all. You can't do that on Shabbos. You couldn't kill an animal or shechita on Shabbos. You couldn't do it. So what could you eat on that Shabbos of Matan Torah? You could only eat milchik. You could only drink the milk of the cow. You could only eat the butter or the cheese, which you'd prepared already. That was the only thing they could eat. They couldn't eat anything else. So therefore, we, on that day, keep the milk. That's number one. Okay. Second minhag is flowers, water flowers. You have them in shul. Well, the shul's closed, but you won't even get any at home this week. I've got artificial. I'll never forget. I was told when I got married, always bring your wife flowers for Shabbos. And I did. I bought an artificial ones. I dust them every week. So we're no problem there, apart from the other ones. So we've got artificial, but we decorate the flowers to show you that Har Sinai blossomed. It was amazing, beautiful, blossomed, that the flowers all came to celebrate with us. The other custom is that we learn all night. Now, what does this mean like for people to sit up? There are different minhagim on this, by the way, different customs. And you've got to go according to your own. There is a Tikkun Leil Shavuos, where they go through all the first parshas of every Seder right through Tanakh, and they learn, go right the way through. There are others who sit and learn b'kviyas, with partnership. We sit and learn, we take a Gemara, you'll sit, you'll learn, and you'll study together. Why do we do that in Shavuos? We should be doing it all the time. But why Dafka Shavuos? And the answer is to compensate for what the Jewish people did on Matan Torah. You know, unfortunately, we were not the best behaved people. When it came to leaving Egypt, we decided that the last plague, if you remember, we ain't going, so we had no food. We had to rush it. We lost our faith. We said we're getting the Torah. They all went to bed, thinking God will bring it in the morning. Nah, it was not. It was that night he got the Torah. They had to go wake them up. So now, because they have to compensate for the sloughing, for the sleeping, we learn Torah all night. Those people who are able to do so. Now, let's understand. These are some of the things which we've got. Some people, by the way, I don't know whether you do it, but you have honey, devash, and milk, honey and cholov. Why? Because the Torah is compared cholov with devash. Like Eretz Yisrael is cholov with devash. We compare the Torah to cholov with devash. There's a minhag as well, by the way. Have you ever been to an opshia, to a haircutting? A 3-year-old child starts to learn Torah, puts his tzitzis on for the first time, gets his kapel on. I've seen it done beautifully. We do this. We get a big chart with the aleph beis on it, and we put a little bit of honey on each one of the letters, and we go through it with the baby. Aleph, aleph, lick it. Oh, he said it's sweet. He said the aleph is a sweet letter, beis, and the Torah is sweet. This is a cholov. In other words, it's chinuch as well. It's education for us to appreciate. So look, let me be honest with you. We're not nudniks. We're not mad. We don't sit at the table when you had all your new fruits and you had all your fruits, apple and honey. We believe in these simonim. We believe in those signs that the Kodesh Baruch Hu watches us. We're trying to emphasize to ourselves that our relationship with God is a sweet one. Our relationship with the Torah is cholov v'dvash. It's that milk and the honey that we understand it. We're showing Hashem in a tangible way what we're accepting in a spiritual way as well. That's all we're doing. It is an amazing thing, this. So that's why we do that as well. Now, let's go now to the other thing about eating dairy on Shavuos. How do we eat dairy on Shavuos? Some people eat dairy as a meal. Some people even have it as mazoinus. I don't know whether you have a kiddush, you have your milchik, and then you sit down later on and have your meat. We have to be careful, because if you eat hard cheese, you've got to wait the full time, the same as you wouldn't have to. You can have your kiddush at 11 o'clock now, and you can have your lunch at 12:30, and you can sit down to your meat. Now, why is it that we have meat? This is an interesting thing, this. And there's a whole, by the way, before I go any further, there's a big argument as to what constitutes meat. Meat, or is meat chicken as well? Although the Shulchan Aruch brings down and said that we don't distinguish, because it says lo sevashel gedi b'chalevim, you don't cook meat in the milk of its mother. So people have come to assume that only an animal that produces milk can you not eat together with meat, but a chicken doesn't produce milk, so perhaps we could do it. The answer is no. We do not make a distinction between them as well. All right, and this word that we don't make a distinction, it comes in as well on Shavuos. You will notice, by the way, that Pesach, why do we have 2 days for Pesach? It's because we were not sure when the new month, I didn't know this week, you could see, Rosh Chodesh, we didn't know when Rosh Chodesh was, so it could be the first, or there's 1 day, 2 days, it could be the full month, the second month. So we have to wait until the runners came at the end, and we knew that Pesach was this day, and therefore we, in the diaspora, always kept 2 days because we weren't sure when the Rosh Chodesh was. Is it the 14th, the 15th, the 16th? We didn't know, correct? That was the reason for the Chodesh today. But Shavuos is 50 days after. It's got no date in the Torah. Have a look. Don't tell me you can find a date for Shavuos. 50 days. Chamishim Yom. On the 50th day was Kabbalah Sator. Tisperu Chamishim. Count. You count the days. That's when Shavuos is. Not when you've got the moon. There's no moon there. Shavuos is Chodesh. You didn't have to worry. You wouldn't know it. When they got Rosh Chodesh, Nishkefela, we'd find it. But why do we have Shavuos with 2 days? It should only be 1 day, because we knew exactly when Pesach was after the new moon. 50 days later, we knew when it was. So why we still got 2 days? So the Gemara brings down, the Mishnah says, Lo plug. We don't distinguish between any of the festivals. Pesach's got 2 days, Shavuos got 2 days, Sukkot's got 2 days. We don't distinguish between any of the festivals. And that's why if somebody says to me, why 2 days? By the way, Rosh Hashanah is the only festival where you couldn't decide when Rosh Chodesh was, because it's the very first, the second of the month. Even in Israel, it's called in Hebrew, Yom Arichto. It's a long day. And that's why, by the way, on Shavuos, and no other Yom Tov, on Shavuos you have to eat the peiros of new fruits, because we're not sure whether in fact it is another day or not another day. The only other yontav that you don't make a shechianu on is Pesach, the last days. And I know that my wife always keeps asking me for that. Do we say shechianu? Because you've got to understand, Shavuos is only 2 days, so we say shechianu. Pesach is 2 days, but we don't need the last 2 days are the same as, they're just a conclusion. Sukkot, we say shechianu on the last days because Shmini Atzeres is a separate festival. A completely separate festival there. So let's look at Shavuos. And there's something which I found, and it's an amazing thing, this. You have to look and see that the eating of the meat, there's big, as I said to you, there's very many big arguments. The Rambam, Maimonides, brings down, how do we celebrate a festival? Now, ladies, I'm going to tell you something, a halacha. Please don't misinterpret what I'm going to say. The halacha is, we need what's called in Hebrew Simchas Yom Tov, the festivities. We're going to celebrate. So Rambam says, how do you celebrate? The men should celebrate by the wife cooking for them a nice piece of meat, a nice red wine. That satisfies the man, it makes them happy. Yain Yesamach Levav Enosh. It makes the heart grow fond, it makes the heart happy. And the meat, you enjoy a nice meat meal, although doctors will say don't eat too much of it, but nevertheless it says meat. And okay, there's a big argument, is chicken good enough? The answer, they've come along and said, although there's different opinions, that you can eat chicken as well, but you should eat meat on Yom Tov. For the ladies, they should get bought for themselves, from the husband should buy them nice jewelry, something nice special, perhaps nice clothes, something that will make them very happy, simcha. The Rambam only says you should buy these ornaments, these jewelry, etc. Doesn't say how much you should spend on it. I've now put an addition to this. Only according to what the people are buying it can afford. So don't start thinking that's a shmata. I don't need that. If he's buying it with a full heart, take it with a full heart. But that should give you, buying something for you is a simchas yom tov. Again, I'm going to tell you, and this is a shir on its own, the role of the woman. It's the woman is on a pedestal. The woman is on a platter. She's there, something special. And the woman should also have the joy. I always believe that the second day of Yom Tov is for the women. They're so exhausted on the first night of Yom Tov having prepared it. At least they've had a good night's sleep, and the second night they can actually enjoy Yom Tov with everybody else. So perhaps it was made specially for them. But the women have got to be treated. For children, this was always our minhag, even at the Seder. You buy them sweets and chocolate, and if they answered the questions or the 4 questions, you would give them a treat. Although the original reason behind it was to keep them awake, but was also to give them a joy that they understood that you buy them treats for Yom Tov. This is your Simchas Yom Tov as well. So the word, the Rambam, all the commentators come along and talk about the Simchas Yom Tov that we should interpret. So the question is, how can we then, if we're supposed to have Simchas Yom Tov, how is it possible to eat milk? And the answer is that the person on this particular day, or this Suda, should in fact have a simcha. You should make him a milchik meal that he will enjoy, not just any old milky meal, but make a meal that he will appreciate what you've given to him. And that is accepted, by the way, by all the commentators on this particular day, that you have to be also careful. In the olden days, by the way, they used to bring a double korban, a sacrifice of 2 loaves of bread. And we recommend this by eating. Some people have this custom. They will eat milchik to begin with, and then they will have perhaps a couple of hours later, will have a meat meal. I know a lot of my children as well at a fast, when they break their fast, will break it over a cup of coffee and a piece of cake, and then perhaps a half an hour later, will sit down to a proper seudah, and they will sit down and eat a proper seudah there. So we eat these 2 meals. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, you've got to be very careful. If you make milchik bread, which according to halacha we're not allowed to do, you have to mark it clearly that it is milchik bread. You can't make challah milchik. Be careful. The only time you ever alternate in the challahs is Purim. You make a Purim challah where you put just the sweet stuff on it, but not milk, because you could mix it up so badly you could be eating bosa b'cholov, eating together. This is an interesting halacha here. So we have to be very careful what we do. The timing, the meeting between the timing, I'm not going to go into, because that I'm afraid to say to you is something which I won't argue with all of you. But we're commanded here to remember that this whole idea of Purim, of Shavuos, it's a revelation. We're not asked only to remember the Torah, but also to remember the actual revelation and the learning. So the problem is, we were never there. We were not physically there. We were spiritually there, but physically there. So how can we jog our memory to bring to mind an event that we never witnessed ourselves? This was a question which the Rabbi Roberts, so the Gazuzan from Hendon, asked this question. And he brings down a beautiful medrash, a strange one I only learned this week when I was preparing this. He says, Sinai, Mehaicham, but where did Mount Sinai come from? He says, Mehar HaMoriah. He says, God uprooted Mount Moriah and took it to the desert, put it there and called it Har Sinai. He means that Mount Moriah, which the Torah, on which Isaac was taken, Yitzchak was taken up for his binding, that became Mount Sinai. Amazing. I bet you've never heard that medrash, because I had never heard it. So the Chachamim come along and record in the Gemara and Shabbos that the Jewish people, believe it or not, were actually forced to receive the Torah. This you may have heard, that God put a mountain on top of their head, like it says, that Kapo Alehem Har Kegigas, like a barrel. He put the mountain on top of her head and said, now you will accept the Torah. But that's strange, because didn't we say a few days ago, Naaseh v'nishma, we're going to do it? We'll accept it from our own free will. And yet God puts a mountain on top of our head. The answer is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to warn us that Kabbalah HaTorah is fraught with difficulties. It's not something that we can leave. The flames around the mountain, you know, they put the flames around the mountain to stop the animals from going anywhere near it and grazing in it. And the flames around the mountain were to show you that this was the hatred. Sinai comes from the word Sina. And here you've got to understand where we're coming from. There will always be Sina, jealousy, hatred against the Jewish people. That's why the Torah was given to Mount Sinai. They were offered it. Everybody got offered the Torah. They refused it. We accepted it. But we've got to understand that when accepting the responsibility, there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to be with it. They realized afterwards what they'd let go, only after they saw what was in it. But that bitterness turned sour, and they became persistent hostilities. And it was a warning right at that particular time. It was a warning that although they said Naaseh v'nishma, they had to be made sure that they didn't change their mind as well. And the significance of the Anana covered, you know, the pillar of cloud was over there. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu hid his face. So it says, Vayar ha'om. The people understood and they trembled. They realized the reaction that the Jewish people were to overcome their apprehension. And HaKadosh brought them face to face on Mount Moriah, just as Yitzchak was prepared to give up his life for his father, for his Torah, for his Father in heaven. We also have to be prepared, not necessarily to give up our lives, Baruch Hashem, but to make the sacrifices, to show the courage and awakening. We've got to understand that all the nations of the world have been there all our time. That symbolism, that fire, represents what we're going to have to go through. What have we gone through? Look at the history of the Jewish people, the Spanish Inquisition. We go through all these other things. We go through right up to the very present day to the Holocaust. Kadosh Baruch Hu warned us. He said to us, you're going to suffer. But if you're united and we'll come out of this better. Now, Shavuos is man-made. And yet, it's interesting. I don't know if you know this, but there's a difference. We say Kiddush, your Kiddush on Friday for Shavuos. It says, Eile Moadei Hashem Mikroi Kodesh. These are the festivals which are appointed, Eile Moadei Hashem Mikroi Kodesh, Asher Tikru Osom, which you will appoint them. By the way, if you look down to the order of all the festivals, Shabbos is the first thing it talks about. Very strange that. Why is Shabbos? It says Shabbos is compared to the festivals are compared to the Shabbos, and yet they're completely different. Please understand, Shabbos is preordained by God. We don't have anything to do with Shabbos. It's there, Eile Moadei Hashem. This is the Moed of Shabbos. Shabbos is a festival which God instituted. God gave it to us. God made it. You can't change it. Asher tikru oisom, but the other yomim tovim, tikru, you will point them up. You know, I've done this with you with the Beis Din. We have got in our hands the responsibility to decide when Shabbos, when Yom Tov will be. We can't decide when Shabbos is, but we can decide when Yom Tov is. Shabbos and Yom Tov are together, and it's coming to tell us that Shavuos, actually, believe it or not, is half for man and half for God. The half for the man is the festival of Simchas Yom Tov, which everybody has to enjoy. That's the food and everything else. But the other half is a Simcha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of learning. Now, God gave us two things, and this comes in as well, to be what we call fixed and what we call in our possession, in our hand. When God gave us the Torah, he was emphasizing, which Torah did he give us? Both, I said to you. He gave us the Torah Shebichsav, the written Torah, the Torah Shebi Peh, the oral Torah. What's the difference? The written Torah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mikra. He wrote it, you can't change it. But he gave you the power of Torah Shebi Peh to put in your sixpence worth. And you'll notice, by the way, that he gave it to, first of all, the Torah Shebichsav and the Torah Shebi Peh together. It started off, and we had the Tanoim came along, who wrote the Mishnah. But then what happened after that was called in Hebrew, Yeridas Hadoros, the deterioration of the generations. A Tana Mishnah, if you ever learned Mishnah, you'll see it's tiny, couple of verses, and you've got a Mishnah. They knew what they were talking about. Beis Shammai says this, Beis Hillel says that, and finished. Then he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, in order to understand it, I'm giving you the opportunity to be able to interpret the Torah according to all. And by the way, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Shlosh Torah Nidroshes, there's 13 ways in which the Torah is interpreted. The Torah Shebi Peh is the oral law which we have got the right to interpret and understand. And we started off with the Tanoim. We then go to the Amoraim who wrote the Gemara. Then we go to Rashi, then to Tosfos, Rishonim, Achronim. We're going up to the present-day rabbis who are coming along and writing Sforim until you're coming out of your head. You can't keep up your library because each one is reinterpreting the Torah according to the interpretation which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us to do it. He's given us that opportunity. Rabbi Akiva comes along with every ace, with every word of et in the Torah. It says here, Kaved esovicho vesimecho. Honor your father. Comes along, Rabbi Akiva told him and said, that includes your big brother, that includes your teachers. Every word, every letter as it is interpreted, and all in different ways. This, the Chachamim are coming to time tell us as well, is the difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Shabbos, we can't interpret and change it. It's there. We've got the Shabbos, we've got the halachas, we've got it. However, Yom Tov, you have the right, as like the Torah Shebi Peh, to decide in those days when it will be and how you would observe it that days. That was the interesting thing, is you were able to reinterpret it according to the Psalm, to the Pshat, not to change it. You come along and say, we're living in the 20th century. And I've said this to you, like we said, if you remember, I said last week, where they're coming along and saying, in the olden days, we didn't have motor cars and we're not doing any work. Oh, we didn't have electricity. What are we doing? We're just switching on a switch. No, we haven't got the right to go with. Do you know, by the way, and I was looking through to find a modern interpretation of something. And the best one is, if you see the animal of your enemy noch as well, on a burden, you will go and help him. Now, we don't drive around in donkeys these days, do we? We drive around in cars. And I'm going to tell you, the analogy is, if you take it, that the Torah Shebichsav says you help the donkey on his burden. If you see an enemy, or even a very close friend, his car is broken down, stop. See if you can help. The car needs help. That's exactly like the donkey. In other words, you're reinterpreting it into a modern interpretation, but not taking it away from its original idea. The light, you're creating. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says Shabbos is a day in which you physically stop creating anything. Give up the creation. You have got to sit back and relax now. You're not allowed to make, because electricity, when you're creating, I mean, we've got the modern now, you can use a time switch. An amazing thing this. You've got a time switch, use it. And I must tell you, to keep up to date, this year there was a big argument. I don't know whether you heard about this one, but could you kosher a microwave for Pesach? I phoned up one guy and he said no. Another guy said to me yes. So I never forget when I first got into the microwave years ago, I phoned up a Diane and I said, Diane, can I cash a microwave? To which his answer was as follows, Plancey, what is a microwave? So it was something brand new. So a few weeks later, I get a phone call before Pace. He says, I've just got a present of one. I don't know how he schnorred it. He says, this is how you do it with the water and everything. All of a sudden, it's changed now. So in other words, you've got to understand that we have the right, and when the Beis Din come along with a psak halacha, they have the right because it's not changing the Torah shebichsav, it's changing the Torah shebi al peh. And look at this, by the way. You go in the posture. What does it say? Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkoi. Correct. What did we say by Yismach Moshe? That Moshe rejoiced. It's a very interesting. Ki evedem chalil tifem b'rosh nosat be'omdav har Sinai u'shnei lecher harid b'yodov v'chosav shmiras Shabbos. He gave us Shabbos. What was the happiness? What was the simcha? Yismach Moshe b'matnas in his portion. That we were servants to God, and he gave us the opportunity to stand on Mount Sinai, and he gave us the commandments and said, because what happened was as follows. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Shabbos at Mount Sinai, but Moshe Rabbeinu gave us Shabbos while we were in Egypt. He turned around to Pharaoh and he said, if you remember, he said, what's the point of making them work 7 days? Give them a day off. They didn't realize it was a Shabbos, but nevertheless, it was his interpretation of a Shabbos. And Yismach Moshe, he was so happy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu instituted it as something which would be a permanent thing. However, Yismach Moshe v'matnas chelkoi, but if you come at the very end, what do we say at the end of the brachas? Mekadesh HaShabbos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has sanctified the Shabbos. But what do we say? Mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanim. You'll make the Kiddush. Yontav, what do we say? Mekadesh Yisrael. It's the Jewish people who have sanctified the festivals. Not God. We have sanctified it. Can you see the big difference now between the Torah Shebichsav and the Torah Shebi al Peh? The Torah Shebichsav is Shabbos. That is permanent, can't be changed. Mekadesh HaShabbos. God gave us the Torah, gave us the Shabbos, whatever it is. That is a permanent. But Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us the Shabbos, the Yomim Tovim. We have the power to institute when it will be, how we will celebrate it. And therefore, if you want to come along on Yom Tov with the flowers, and have a milchik meal, you're doing it to be Mekadesh Yisrael v'Azmanim. You're doing it to be Mekadesh the Shabbos. You're not changing anything. You're actually interpreting what it is for Simchas Yom Tov for you on this particular day. As it happens, at night we have meat, and in daytime, at lunchtime, my wife will make for us milchik. It's much lighter, although I should have it the other way around. Maybe this year we could go to bed on a lighter meal, but nevertheless, we certainly do enjoy milchik as well for our meal. And it's an opportunity, if you like, to show HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we have accepted, without the barrel over our head, no pressure, we accept the Torah Shebichsav. We accept it, but we have to go now and learn. As I said to you, learn who we are. Learn the box that we're in. Don't try and jump out of the box that we're not in. We don't have to be somebody else. You know something, if it was, I've always said, if it was meant for you, you will get it. If it wasn't meant for you, you won't get it. Now, it's just before Yom Tov. Can I end off with a bracha? I know it's brachas nosai is the Birchas Kohanim. In the Birchas Kohanim, please note that there are 2 words apart from in the Kodesh Baruch Hu's name at the beginning. Yivarechecha v'yishmerecha, 2. Yo'er, Hashem, Ponav Eilecha v'yichonecha is 4 words, plus Hashem. And the last one, Yisah, is 6 words. But the Kohanim have to turn round and face you, turn their back to the Orna Kodesh. And I'm hoping in Mitzvah Hashem we'll get back to this again. He's turning away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's saying to all of us, be deserving. Listen to the Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you these brachas, but you, please, Klal Yisrael, he's talking to us. He's not talking to God. He's talking to us. May you deserve the Yivarechecha is Gashmius, is materialism. Bracha, Hashem Berachis, Avram was blessed with everything, with physical, with materialism. The first bracha is Yivarecha, 2 portions. Yo'er, Oyer, Torah, that's 4 portions, that's Shavuos. Then it comes, he said, the best thing is to have a combination of all 4, the 2 and the 4, the 6. That's the Yo'er, Yisrael, Hashem, Ponav Eilecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shall turn because you've done this. Now, I give you my bracha. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu give you everything that you need. Not what you want, but what you need. But he can give you what you want as well, but basically what you need. It may be in the portion that the Gashmias should be 2 portions, the Ruchnias should be double it, but it should be a combination, not one without the other. Not, it's like I said with the Shemitah, Ki'im Beruchi Omar Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us all our brachas. If you can only look and see that this, even with the coronavirus, we've got this whole problem, we're stuck away. If only we would understand, we have an opportunity of being able to interpret halacha. Can you see how the Chachomim have come along, the Rabbonim today, the Dayanim, come and say, daven inside without a minyan, because they've come along to tell us quite categorically we have the opportunity. This tefillah is a Torah Shebe'al Peh, although we've got Avram Yitzchak Yang, we know this, but in order to understand the Kodesh Baruch Hu, he's telling us, is listening to all our tefillahs, but do it with an achdus. Think of everybody else. My bracha therefore to all of this is that Kodesh Baruch Hu should give you a fabulous Simchas Yontav, a loving tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, Ben Shlosh Chodesh, that you should have a Chaim Aruchim, Shel Sholem Tova, and that's what you should have also a healthy body, and the plague should go. We should all have a different type of plague, and that is to worry about what we're going to take to Eretz Yisrael when Mashiach will come. So I wish you all a good Shabbos, a good Chodesh, and a good Yontav. Shkoyach.
Thank you so much. In the name of everybody, we wish you a good Shabbos, good Chodesh, good Yontav, and we hope to see you in health in 40 days at Friday a week. Next week you are free.
Oh, good news.
Okay.
And Rabbi Plancey, Abir Sagara. Abir Sagara.
Thank you very much.
Your side?
Your side from my mother on Monday, and she died on Shabbos. I'll never forget this. Some years ago, and the phone rang. Some guy from I didn't answer. The police then came with a note. I flew to the morning and straight back. I felt guilty. I only had 2 nights of Shiva, and it was an embarrassment. I said the rabbi only sat for 2 nights, but it was Yom Tov. You see, this is it. We've got to understand. Somebody asked me this week, why is it for Avelis that for a partner, for a child or anything, that you only have 30 days, and yet for a parent you have a year? And I'll give you my answer, and it's only my answer. A parent you lose, I must tell you, you forget quickly, because you go back to your own life. You go to your family, to your children. You thank your parents. You don't forget them, but what I'm saying is you want to get back to your life, to your future building. You never forget a partner. Not in all of life. Never mind 30 days, 30 years. It's there. The heartbreak is there. A child chas v'sholem. You never forget that. And this is a nature of a human being. And the Torah is always dealt with natural things. The Chachomim always took it into mind. What is the nature of an individual? And that is somebody who is a sibling like this. But you never ever. My wife lost her brother 3-4 years ago. She can't even look at his photograph. And yet for our parents, we've got them all over the house, because we have to keep reminding ourselves. And I'd say to you, we have a Yizkar this week. Mirz Hashem Yizkar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be Zoiche. I know we're doing this, the Zeicha Nishmas, your wife, Mr. Jacob, but I can tell you something. Every bit of Torah goes upstairs, and it goes onto the record, and it's put onto the sheet. Keep going, Myla, because it's interesting that on the Shoshana, with the 2 types of Yamadin. For us, it's Rachamim, and for the upstairs and the Neshamas, it's Yamadin. They can't change it, we can change it. So we've got an opportunity with Rachamim, with mercy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to look forward, to put ourselves really into our boxes, to accept the Torah. Another mitzvah. Nobody's asking you to go jump and become Meshiga. Do a mitzvah. They say la'at, bit by bit, and you'll realize how beautiful the Torah is. And I had a woman, she drove me Meshiga. She says, Rabbi, you should know, I've never missed lighting candles Friday night. She said, I always go, he said, there's a program at 7:30 on the television. As soon as it's finished at 8 o'clock, I put my candles on the television, switch the television off. He says, like the candles. It's Shabbos is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She waits till 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Okay.
Nevertheless, she was doing it with a good heart. So, it's in the show, it's her motivation. And I'll keep telling you, never ever look down on anybody. Always try and build people up. Because, if you look down on somebody, I always keep saying this, and I will repeat it because I talk to myself. I only see my own faults in others. And that's a fact. And therefore, I try not to see faults. I try to better everything. So look in the mirror, like what you see of yourself, as I say, and have a fabulous Yom Tov. Enjoy your cheesecake, and I'm now going into the freezer to see what was left from last year.
Okay. We try because, the first day Shavuos is not so nice day.
Aye.
We have the Yortzeit of my wife.
But it's a pleasure. Good Shabbos. Good job.
Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Een aantal van zijn kinderen hadden corona. En allemaal goed uitgekomen. Hij is doodsbang.
Ja.
Hij zegt aan die diabetic